All right. Well, we are back sooner than expected. We are not wearing the appropriate attire, probably, although I am more formally dressed up. Anytime I am looking something similar to this, you can tell I am doing the rounds, which means something somewhat prominent has happened in the world of AS Roma. And that is, of course, today we find ourselves, some lamenting, others, I won't say loudly cheering, but certainly split reaction to Roma and their decision to sack Jose Mourinho. Before we get into the absolute chaos that has enveloped over the previous 48 hours, a thank you to our newest patrons over at Patreon: Bryce Gibbons, Rogerio, Matthew Hudak, and Francesco Rosati. Thank you to all four of you who have to be at least partially sick, wanting to join within hours of Jose Mourinho having been sacked by Roma. Nonetheless, sick or not sick, no matter what your level of depravity is, we welcome and love all. If you would like to join, patreon.com/RomaPress. And of course, the video version of the podcast on YouTube at IS Roma Press. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we apologize. The previous episode was out of what was the tech team had an off day, clearly. So this one has to go better. It can't go worse. I don't even know where to start, Andy. To begin, I got the news, obviously, of Jose Mourinho.
You were asleep
And
when it
no,
happened.
I wasn't. So here's what bothered me, because I said this a couple of times in the previous episodes. Somebody at Roma had to have listened, at least in passing, and heard me say this and said, "You know what? We're going to give to him the middle finger." There were rumblings of this after Milan in the immediate aftermath. And then we go one full day, nothing happens. It seems okay.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps they're going to let this go out. And I specifically, at a very specific time, I messaged to my contact at Roma, one of the heads of media and communication, and I just said, "Listen, help me out here. Nothing's going to happen between now and the middle of the night, correct?" And he goes, "No, I don't think so. I really don't think so." Something was going to happen, just having read that. But then in the middle of the night, I'm having one of those odd dreams. Many people will be able to relate to this. I'm having one of those odd dreams that when you take one of those medications that is designed to help you fall asleep through the night, like in acetaminophen, but it's designed for nighttime. You have the weirdest and most bizarre dreams. I don't know what the correlation is, but it was one of those dreams, and I've taken an exhaustive study. Every single male on planet Earth has had this exact dream where you are fighting somebody and you're punching them, but it is doing nothing, doing no damage. It is doing no damage. Every single person has had a dream such as that. I was in the middle of one of those dreams, and of course, I get up from having delivered 1,000 blows to somebody and doing no damage, and I get the word just before Roma come down with the official news. They gave everyone a heads up before they put out the press release. Um, I I don't know what happened between those very few hours between the loss to Milan and early this morning. Was it something that came after Dan Friedkin met with Jose Mourinho? Because it was Dan Friedkin who was the one to deliver the news to Jose Mourinho that he was going to be dismissed, which in a way disappointed me, Andy, because just the vision. You and I, we both have these very baby faces, okay? Well, so does Ryan Friedkin. And in my mind, I had this vision at Trigoria of there is Jose Mourinho, 58, 59 years of age, something like that. And Ryan
No,
Friedkin, who
he's
is the
60.
same age.
He's the
Yeah,
big
okay.
6'0".
So 60. And then a man half of his age who does not look his age whatsoever in Ryan Friedkin, the vice president of Roma, walking in and saying, "You know what, Jose, it's time to go. We appreciate what you've done, but The results are just not up to it lately. I just had this early 30s guy who again has the same blessing or curse depending on your outlook of you and I. How we have baby face. It's okay. Going in and delivering the news to this guy almost twice his age. It wasn't him who did it. Again, Dan Friedkin came down from the throne, so to speak, to make his voice known and deliver the news to him that it was over after 2.5 years. We'll go through what this means or how we view his 2.5 years. We will obviously talk about his replacement, but let's just start out with immediate reaction because it was split. I mean, truly, there are very few, well, not very few, but there are very few times where you have people on the side of an issue for Roma where it's gray. You have like the Romanisti. I talked about it previously in older episodes, like the 1.0 and then the 2.0. You have factions of Roma supporters, but in this case, it wasn't like that. This was black and this is white. I'm happy he's gone. I'm mad he's gone. Very few kind of lingered in the middle, which is kind of where I find myself, to be honest with you. But what is your immediate reaction? Because mine is, I can understand the decision. But if I want to be hypocritical, where I said in the previous episode, where I can't understand somebody having a balanced view after that Milan match, saying, okay, well, it's only 5 points. Truly, even if you lose tonight to Milan at San Siro, okay, but you are still technically in the race. And at a time like this, when you decide to sack the manager, I still find myself saying, you technically were still and are still in the race for top 4. So if you want to talk about the gamble, I mean, what you would know better than I. What was the worst film put out by the Friedkin group? It's almost like, okay,
Right now
we
there
have
is no. They haven't had a remarkably bad. No, they are actually invested money
Parasite.
in Oscar winners. So
In
what?
terms of gross revenues, what is the highest? Parasite.
Well, probably yes, because it was a global phenomenon. So, yeah, but Dan Friedkin directed a small movie called The Last Vermeer that nobody saw. So maybe we can mention that. But otherwise, I mean, they've produced the Killers of the Flower Moon by Scorsese recently. Friedkin also helped with the production of Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan. So when it comes to movies,
which 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 bore one of the best memes of Dan
they
Friedkin. Yeah.
they got a yes, well, with the plane and all, yeah, they have a pretty good feeling about movies, at least. So that's
Wait, I thought they did Parasite. Maybe I am wrong.
well,
Didn't they?
I mean, John, they will never say Dan Friedkin production. They, it's money that you invest in
Okay.
as an
Well,
executive producer, or it's you're involved but externally.
clearly,
So
I know nothing then.
you know,
What? Nonetheless, this is them putting a ton of money into like a film and hoping, crossing their fingers,
well,
it is going
it
to work
was
out.
in the first place. It was in the first place. When you
Correct,
ask me,
correct.
when
So
you
I find myself again. I fully admit hands fully in the air, where I find myself saying, okay, I can't disagree with the notion of wanting to sack Jose Mourinho. If we just base off things that have happened over the previous 4 weeks, Roma are well within reason, are well within their rights to do so. Man, that is a large gamble, though, to do it now. And you can't talk of this decision without discussing the replacement. I mean, they're intertwined. One is completely linked to the other. If I didn't have I won't say misfortune because that might lose us a guest to come on here once more. I unfortunately watched every single one of Daniele De Rossi's matches at Spal, And I don't want to be too harsh because the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Tacopino will make an appearance on here at some point soon.
You watched like 20 Serie B games in a row?
I did. I watched every single
Okay.
one of them.
Jesus. I didn't
Um,
know I was dealing with
Tactically,
a
man,
clinical insane
um,
patient. I didn't know you belong to some Shutter Island stuff. I mean, 20
listen,
Serie
man.
B
Once you
games
watch
of Joe
Roma, you begin
Tacopina.
to embrace the depravity of your mind. Tactically with Spal, it was
Is our
concerning
good friend
stuff.
Joe Tacopina still the owner of Spal, or is he gone?
Of course, he is, man.
Oh, okay. I
Come
didn't
on.
know that. I'm sorry. I just know
Come
because
on. Clearly, you are not watching Serie C. This.
he's been recently photographed with Asa Procky because he's the guy's lawyer. So
Well, if you
that's
look
all I
at
know.
his client list, he has some interesting
Remarkable ones. Well, I
Matthew
think
Drinkwater. I mean, some good ones. But anyway, um, we will get to De Rossi momentarily. But I mean, truly, this is not me trying to be a coward and not take a strong stance. But again, I always try to take a nuanced approach because I think in life, very few things are so black and white. If you are not able to see both points of view, you are missing half of an argument, in my opinion.
I'm pretty sure you stole that from me. I think I said that
If
and
I
you
did
just took
steal
it.
that from you, I
Pretty sure.
something like that. All this nuance thing, because
Yeah.
I always get told, well, you're kissing Jose Mourinho's ass, so on and so forth. But listen,
Of course, and
but
that's
listen,
normal.
right now, I have to at least have in my mind, if I want to be fair, the guy who was saying, well, even if you lose tonight against Milan, you are still
Yes,
technically in the race for top four,
yes,
and that is
yes,
still
yes,
true.
yes.
That is still true. So this is a risk. Would it be one I personally would have taken if
Yeah,
I were Dan Friedkin? Probably not. No. But
there
clearly
is
there
a
was
flip
something he
side
did
to
not
it.
like.
There is a flip side to that statement. You're still in the race. So what can you do? You either keep on going with Mourinho, hoping that it comes around the way it came around in previous seasons, or you take a gamble and maybe with some new energies, a new
Mm.
voice, you get out of it. You do something, um, and you are able to pull something out of nothing, out of a magic hat. Um, my first reaction, I'm not gonna quote Matteo Renzi on this, but my first reaction this morning was very similar to my reaction was when Mourinho was appointed in the first place. I was like, is somebody playing tricks on us? Like, is this a fake account? Do they? Because as always with the Friedkins, you never really know until it hits you, until the moment comes where they communicate it officially. So even when I was doing the review for the morning press that we usually release on the website, I translated from Italian to English. I was looking through all these articles, and I even published an article that said Antonio Conte is a possibility now
Stop.
in January.
Stop. Come
And I
on.
was like, well, that's not gonna happen. This is a guy who's well known for rejecting offers mid-season, and especially after that experience with Tottenham. And so I was looking, and all of a sudden this news pops out, and I don't really know how to feel about it. I had conflicting feelings because I think it's disappointing to see this come to an end. I don't think this is an end that fits uh, all the things that Mourinho brought to the club, and it is a huge gamble on the part of the Friedkins. It's a huge gamble for Mourinho's replacement because De Rossi, this is practically his first real coaching experience, given his short-lived spell at Spal. And I think it's what we're seeing is, for better or worse, it's owners taking matters into their own hands. For such a long time,
Yes.
I kept hearing that Palotta needs to be in Rome. For such a long time, I heard that Palotta needs to pull the trigger, needs to take a decision, needs to take a stance, do this, do that. Especially remember with Garcia, that whole situation with when Roma hesitated for like 2 3 months, and it was because the ownership at that time didn't want to take a stance. There were conflicting views within the club, and so what happened today is the owners not liking the situation, going against the current, and deciding that it's necessary, that there is too much at stake. There is still a lot to squeeze out of this team.
Please get into Capello. I'm
And
itching. I know you're getting
well,
there. Come
yes,
on.
no, but I'm yeah. Well, Capello is a whole different thing, because Capello is the classic example of a senile old pundit who is not a coach anymore, has not been a coach in God knows how long, and
Yes.
talks about, ownership lacking respect, when he was the first one to lack respect to the ownership of Roma at the time by
Yes.
running away in the middle of the night and joining their arch rivals Juventus in those years. And so he's
Yeah,
the
he would
last one
have
to talk.
preferred that. He didn't like the style of Friedkin and their
He's
handling
the
of this.
last
The
one. He's the last one to
break.
talk. And this decision, just like appointing Mourinho, will have a lot of talking heads. And I'm already feeling like a lot of the fans have turned back the clock to Pallotta years, where, I mean, even today we saw fans outside Trigoria with like leaflets, calling Friedkin a pig and stuff like that. And I just think that is so childish, because if there is a moment to band together as fans, if there is a moment to support the club, you can have contrasting views, you can have a different outlook on this situation. I'm not here to tell you how to feel about Mourinho leaving or Mourinho possibly staying on. That's for you to think about. But if there is a time to not go out of your way to discourage the people that are working for the club, is right now. It is right now, when there is a lot of uncertainty, when there is an inexperienced manager, a club legend coming, into this situation that probably nobody wanted. So, because
Right.
it's like that, it's, do you want to stick with Mourinho and possibly seeing this team plummet, because when we came here after the derby and Milan, we felt like the team was helpless. The team was
Mm,
flat. It was not responding. So when people say, well, but so many players liked him, it's one thing to like the coach. It's one thing to respect him and to be friends with him and to look up to him. But if you're not showing that you understand what he's trying to convey to you on the pitch, and it showed, this was the case for Roma,
yes.
then that is very worrying in the long run. So for the Friedkins was, do you want to stick with Mourinho and potentially see this team continue to plummet down the table? Or do you want to take a major gamble, but with the potential upside of seeing this team have some new life breathed into them, and still maintain some form of peace with the fan base? Because as long as De Rossi is there, the fans will show up, right? Because that's what Mourinho brought to us. That's why I said I felt
Yes.
sad, because I think Mourinho, you may like him, you may not like him, gave this club that long gone enthusiasm that we had forgotten in God knows how long, because this type of energy, this type of dynamic was not there
No.
throughout Luciano Spalletti, Eusebio Di Francesco, even Claudio Ranieri. It was not there. That connection was not there. I can only think of maybe the first Rui Garcia, where it was even slightly comparable, that excitement. But here the
Yes.
excitement was
Yes.
regardless of the results. The Rudi Garcia team was flying. This team did not fly. This team struggled. And it's fair to recognize it. So I'm not here to rewrite history. I'm not going to pretend like Mourinho gave us the greatest results in the history of the sport. He brought us a trophy. He helped us to a trophy. He helped us to a European final. He gave us some of the worst league records in the history of the club. In the good and the bad, but the excitement, that bond that was built over these last 2.5 years, to me, I really failed to recollect anything that came close to that. So And that's been huge for Roma. That's been huge for Roma, no matter what decision they took. The fact that the fans show up for Romelu Lukaku at the airport is because he's coming over for Jose Mourinho. The way the fans filled the streets for Paulo Dybala is also because Mourinho was there in the first place. And I feel like now, with Mourinho gone, you lose that kind of balance that allowed
Yeah.
a line of communication. But you have Daniele De Rossi. So it's obviously it's a great PR move. Obviously it's
Yes.
a great PR move.
The
But
unification candidate. Yeah.
it's a great PR move, but
Yes.
Mourinho was also a great PR move. Mourinho was
Correct.
a move of, hey, here is this world renowned, one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport. You're Roma. And yet here you are. And what Mourinho brings, even at that time, after being sacked by Tottenham, was a global spotlight. All of a sudden, Roma were back to the world map. They were back to being competitive, even on and off the pitch. People just, with Mourinho there, people expected Roma to be competitive. People wanted Roma to be competitive with Mourinho. So he brought that edge, he brought that excitement. And now with Daniele De Rossi, you have the complete opposite. You have a newbie. You have somebody who is just learning the basics. But the truth of the matter is, and to me this is very important because because Filippo Biafora of Il Tempo, our good friend, said something to me. It was very worrying and may explain what happened. Filippo Biafora of Il Tempo today at the radio said that a week ago some players complained to Ryan Friedkin, to vice president, because he's usually there. Dan is not always there.
Correct.
Ryan is, he's sort of the intermediate, and they complained to Ryan Friedkin about how they felt playing under Mourinho on the pitch. You know how they felt. They didn't like what was going on. They didn't like how the team moved, and you can see that in the Milan loss. The players are arguing on the pitch.
Yes. Yeah.
Zaleski, instead of running towards Theo Hernandez, runs away
He
from
runs
him.
away. Yeah.
So
Someone
these
did
are
a
all
screenshot
symptoms.
of when you look at the spacing. I think it was the first goal, man. It is some of the most egregious shit.
It's awful. It's
The
awful.
spacing and
It's
positioning.
awful.
It's
But it
mm,
hints at something that is there, and you can be the greatest coach in the sport. The moment you lose the connection with the locker room, regardless of your accomplishments, you cannot continue. Just like Carlo Ancelotti, great coach, walks into the Napoli team, you know, Napoli players stop responding to him. You have to be gone.
correct.
It unfortunate. That's the sport. So that is my reaction. That is my reaction. My reaction is, hey, here we have a new life with De Rossi, because life doesn't end. Life doesn't end for Mourinho after Roma. Mourinho's going to have another team to join. Mourinho's going to continue to have a career. Just the same way, Roma will continue to be a club, regardless of who's general manager or who's manager.
You
Um,
mean these takes on Twitter of people saying so and so is finished or Roma is finished, no more
right. Yeah,
relevancy?
yeah.
Oh,
Go back
yeah,
to
the
being a
brain dead
mid-table club.
stuff,
I'm
man.
sorry.
Give me a break. Come on, be
I
serious.
know. I found a comment on Twitter, no, on YouTube, under one of our videos, and maybe it was under my live stream from earlier today, where it said, "Yeah, nice, go back to being a mid-table club." I'm sorry, where are we right now?
Right. Wait,
Where are
yeah,
we right now? So
right, right,
so Daniele De
right.
Rossi walks into this situation with zero experience. Basically, he's the opposite of Mourinho. Friedkins go the whole other way, and I understand, because for the most part, this preoccupation stems from the fact that all of a sudden they pulled the trigger. All of a
Yes,
sudden, here's a bunch of owners who actually went out of their way and made a decision that fit their agenda. Okay, they didn't listen to the fan base. They didn't wait. They didn't think, well, they could have taken this action sooner in the summer. came to the conclusion, hey, listen, held the confrontation with Mourinho either before Budapest or after Budapest, where it was like, listen, no matter what happens in Budapest, we part ways and we are
Yes.
friends and we go each. So I think Mourinho's story should have ended in Budapest. It would have been a
In
beautiful story. It
hindsight,
would have
yes.
been a beautiful fairy tale ending, no matter the outcome. Even with that loss, if Mourinho walks away from it, it looks good. It looks good because it shows that he's given it all. And instead, I think Mourinho just pushed himself, went against his own instinct. Remember, he gathered all those players at full time in Budapest and told them, if I'm staying, it's because I'm staying for you. And that feeling was clearly a feeling dictated by him going against his own instinct. Mourinho probably would have walked away from Roma at that instance, but
I
his
couldn't agree
connection
more.
with
Yeah.
those players prompted him to go against his own instinct, and then began his third season in the club. And unfortunately, that connection was no longer there. Something broke in Budapest. Roma never addressed it. Mourinho never addressed it. And so, hence, this is the delayed reaction to that. This is the delayed reaction, but it is a reaction. It is a remarkable reaction in the sense of this is a very unpredictable decision that can pay off. It can lead to trouble, but it can pay off. And life continues even with Daniele De Rossi on the bench.
100%. And the issue, okay, that I and you have had with this Roma over the previous, what, months, even the Napoli victory, the thing we have had the problem with, and I think you can find no better metaphor or summary of the issues this team has had than last week in the Coppa Italia. You show nothing, you show no effort, you show no fight, you show no spirit, nothing. It is a nothing performance. It's a zero of a performance against Lazio. The one thing for the questions you may have of Daniele De Rossi, which I have plenty, particularly from a tactical point of view, and how he is able to set up the team. You know, with him in charge, at minimum, at minimum, you may not get the tactical acumen as you would everybody else, but at minimum, I can guarantee you, you are going to have the effort. You are going to have the spirit and the fight. Okay, we know that I won't have to worry about him shoving. If someone is not up to it, he will take his foot and shove it straight into their backside. Because if there is one thing that we know about Daniele De Rossi, the guy will fight, or did fight, regardless of the match, regardless of the moment. I mean, even when Roma are shit, he's still slapping the opposition in the face, and even though he's conceding a penalty, he's at least showing something. I won't. I won't have to worry about that, or I should say, I won't be concerned that the manager might not be able to get these guys up. If you look at the photos, and this is the romanticism of it all, yeah? Roma putting out all these photos of the man coming back home, the reunion, the homecoming, whichever way you want to put it. The romanticism of this specific decision it's captivating. I mean, regardless of what you think of this decision,
No, it's pure Roma. I don't understand.
yeah,
People
yes,
people complain if these Americans are taking away. No, this is pure Roma. This is pure
right,
Roma. The
right. This
idea
is
of for so long, Roma fans were like, "Well, De Rossi in the future he'll join us." No, he joined us now. He joins us now
right,
because
yes,
there's nobody else. It's like with Ranieri coming back in 2018, 2019.
exactly,
Who else? Who
exactly.
else is gonna come and save us? Well, here's this guy from Testaccio, the local kid from the block who almost won a Scudetto in 2010. And here he is coming back to save us. The same thing comes here. De Rossi, a name, a young name, one of those players from that generation of Gattuso, Pirlo, who tried their luck. In my opinion, the main difference is De Rossi is a very smart person.
Yeah, well, yeah, no one
Because
will
you can say a lot of
mistake
things
Gattuso
about
for that.
you can say a lot of things about Pirlo being an intelligent player. You can say a lot of things about Gattuso as an intelligent player, but De Rossi is an intelligent person. So
Yes,
for me, in this situation, that matters more than De Rossi as a player. What De Rossi could bring to this situation as a coach, reflecting on his career as a player, is one thing. But I'm interested in him bringing his intelligence as a person to the situation. And by this, I mean De Rossi knows fully well what the situation is. He's not
Yes.
fooling himself. His contract is valid until June. There is no option. There is just a bonus. There's nothing more to it. It's just him returning to Roma in an emergency situation. He's been there as a player. He's witnessed these things. He's played under several coaches. He's been there in 2012, 2013. He's been there in 2018, 2019 when Ranieri came in. It was the final 12 games of his career as a Roma player, right? He retires with Ranieri on the sideline, with watching him in that final game. I believe it was against Parma. So that's he knows. He's come from that reality. So he's not fooling himself. He's not coming here with false expectations. If it works out for him, great. He's got a magnificent story to tell. If it doesn't, the
There's no
respect.
ugly divorce.
No,
That's
there's
the
nothing
beauty
that,
of it.
I see people from the outside saying, well, I
Yeah.
don't, hopefully that doesn't tarnish his reputation.
Yeah,
What,
come on.
what are
Come
you
on. He
talking
knows the
about? There's,
situation. Come on.
there's nothing there to be tarnished. The relationship with De Rossi will remain intact regardless of what happens. He can have the worst stretch of his career or the best. It's going to be the same because the bond is there. The situation is the way it is. It requires somebody to take over. I don't see, I can understand the worry that people have that you throw a young coach and he's gonna lose his way. But who
It
else do
can't
you
be
throw?
worse than now.
It's a no way out situation. It's like in that year of 2018, 2019. If it's
Correct.
not Ranieri, who is it? Is it Iachini? Is it Del Neri? I mean, no. This is it's like 2004, 2005. Who takes over if not Bruno Conti? Who takes
Correct.
over? No. So
You're exactly right.
this is what I'm saying is people interpret this as a life or death situation. No, football changes. Nothing ends. Mourinho was great, and I will be forever thankful to him. I look back to some of the greatest moments of my lifetime as a Roma fan, some of the greatest joys, and some of really the greatest emotions, just overall, not even positive ones, but just so intense. It was very intense. We were granted permission to watch as this team climbed its way through Europe. Okay, we
Right.
saw how this team went from being a team that was scared of their opponents to being a team that was in full control of their uh, their path in Europe. We saw this team face some of the great sides in Europe and beat odds and go and come back and complete really remarkable feats and always challenging our expectations, where we begin the season with a certain set of expectations. Roma say, no, we got you, we're gonna do this. Okay, we let Bodo beat us 6-1. Well, you know what? We're going to face them later on and we're going to beat them. Or like
Correct.
Feyenoord last year. Guess what? You're meeting the finalists, the team that you faced in the Conference League final. And you know what? You're going to lose the first leg and then you're going to go back home and you're going to win in extra time. Now, how romantic is that? Okay. And those are things that are possible with Mourinho. Mourinho did that. I think when I look back on his stretch, this third season, unfortunately, is marked by a lot of disappointing displays. Last season, you have those beautiful, tough, really tough games where you just read your opponent so well that the game is over from the first minute. And I'm thinking of Real Sociedad. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of Bayer
Sociedad,
Leverkusen,
Bayer
where,
Leverkusen.
where you're
Those
just
two are
so laser focused, so efficient. You just cut through the opponent right away, just mentally. And same thing for that Feyenoord win, where it's like Roma just took them by storm. And then this season was more difficult. This season, what jumps at me is that defeat at Genoa. And I think if there was
Yes,
a time to pull
that
the
was a
trigger,
catalyst of this
if
season, man.
if
It's
there
you could
was
feel it too.
if there was a time to pull the trigger earlier than this, it was after that defeat, because
Yes,
that really felt like a major event in Mourinho's tenure at the club. That felt like one of those losses that you don't forget so easily.
that
And
was
we had
not
that.
normal, and we said it at the time too, by the way.
Yes,
There
we
was
said it. We
something
said
in
we
that
said
where
it
it was
doesn't,
not
despite
normal.
we said it despite the scoreline feeling oddly familiar to that scoreline against Udinese last season. Remember, we got that beating 4-0 by Udinese, but that beating felt casual. The loss to Genoa felt like a really strong low point for Mourinho at
Yes,
Roma. And then this most recent, the final cry of battle against Napoli. That was the last moment of pure joy that Mourinho afforded us. That was the last moment where we saw a team dominate the opponent. That where we saw a team not hesitate, not question itself. We saw a team that was organized and that was fired up. And I think when I look back on it, that is the last match that I want to remember as Mourinho was in charge. A final cry of battle of a Roma team that had shown promise, but perhaps misread the situation and continued and extended what shouldn't have continued and been extended.
I think you put perfectly what his legacy is at Roma. I mean, obviously we have the Conference League, but to have this shift in total mentality. I mean, for us to go from at least I speak for myself when I say this. Roma going into a European fixture or a European tie, okay, against a big club. We were just some years ago at the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't want us to concede 7 tonight. I don't want to concede 7. Anything beyond that is fantastic. It is the cherry atop the Sunday, so to speak. Just don't let us concede 7 goals. To be at the point now where, and this is where some people lose me, when you can hate Jose Mourinho all you want, but when I hear some people say, well, tactically, he's just not up to it anymore. He's not a modern manager. I am sorry. You cannot watch those two ties against Real Sociedad and Bayer Leverkusen and tell me the guy does not know what he is doing tactically. Yes, he may have some hiccups, so to speak, in the
And it
league.
may not be pretty to watch, it may not
Right,
be pretty to
right.
watch, but it's so efficient and effective, and just it stands out. I still can remember what those games felt like. I still
Yes,
remember the feeling of reassurance that Mourinho at his best gave me as a fan, coming off previous managers, previous years, where it was always a question of exactly how much are we going to concede, are we going to show up. With Mourinho, you had the sense of, oh, I'm in safe hands.
that second leg, man, in Germany was. I mean, I just I would have to Google the exact statistics, but I know Bayer had over 20 shots. I know they had possession of 60% at minimum. That to me
Bayer
was
had 28 shots.
that for me is football nirvana, matches like that, because I can't tell you how many times where Roma go into a match like that and they absolutely piss themselves in every conceivable
And
manner.
misread the situation. The
Yes,
Liverpool
and
first leg. Remember when they think it's the same setup against Barcelona will work against Liverpool, and it's like, no,
correct,
it doesn't work.
correct,
You have to adapt.
correct. And by the way, not only in their approach tactically, but their belief. You watch a single match of the Roma of Garcia, it looks like the lambs being prepared for slaughter. I still have in my mind that match against Bayern Munich, where it was Roma's defense was a runway
Right. And
for
remember
those
Pep
that just
Guardiola saying Roma are
come
one of
on
my
in.
favorite teams to watch. The
I
classic
couldn't do
Pep
it. Yes,
Guardiola line. One of my favorite
yeah,
teams.
but
I draw inspiration from them.
yeah, yeah. One of his favorite to play against, too, at least in that moment. I mean, I was forever scarred by that. To see Roma go from that to what Jose Mourinho did to them. It wasn't about the tactics. And by the way he was able to pull things out of guys that you and I expected nothing from. That tie against Bayer Leverkusen. Eduardo Bove is the one who scores the lone goal, okay, to send you through and to secure for you qualification onto the next round. A guy that Jose Mourinho launched. His ability to, and by the way, he was almost forced to do it. It was not as if he had many other options, but to show the ball.
Most of those situations were forced upon him, upon
Yes,
the circumstances.
but he could have done the route of Antonio Conte. And in fairness, Jose Mourinho, he did do it for about 1 to 2 months,
Yes,
but he
he was
dropped it.
tempted
Whereas
to do
Conte
it.
does
He
it
was
for,
definitely tempted to do it.
he does, but Conte does it for the entire season. He could have complained, he could have moaned and whined, but you know what? He launched Eduardo Bove, and now we can say what? Of the very few bright spots this season, he's probably the lone one if we want to find anything. So for me, that is how I will remember him always to the Conference League. The arrival too. There was just something very romantic about it too, especially given you can
Yeah,
expect there's always going to be
but
like
also
some complaining.
consider the moment that he came, that arrival, that
Well,
the
right,
excitement at the
correct.
airport. That was after COVID. That was after years of fans not showing up. Remember, there was during Spalletti years, there was all that tension and the booze. And I think one
Well, too, and
section of
it's an
the
Interista
curva
too.
was
I
closed.
mean,
I think the curva was closed. It it
yes,
it felt like there was a clear disconnect between Roma and its fans. And Mourinho came in like a band-aid. He patched it up together. He strengthened it. And so there is that. There is the human aspect. There is the success that he was able to bring back to Roma. And then obviously there is also bitter tears, situations that you could have handled better, records that could be prettier, but at the end of the day, he gave us something. It's undeniable.
yes.
And I'm pretty sure that Roma gave him something too. Roma made
I
him
mean, look at
feel
his reaction,
important.
man. You clearly that he was touched. They
Clearly,
put something onto him.
Mourinho, I think, was coming off a long spell where he was taken for granted, where he was
Yes,
being dismissed. Here, with all the buzz around him, for better or worse, because a lot could be bad, with the way Italian media work, a lot of it was bad, but there was a lot of good there too, in how the fans acknowledged his importance to the club and to the way the club is perceived. They understood that this guy represented them. And honestly, I think he did everything he could to represent the club as well as he could have. Um, Hence the emotion, because he stood
right.
up for something for the first time, I think, in a long time. It wasn't in his eyes. It wasn't about Mourinho. It was about something else, something bigger, a club, and that's why I hope that as Roma will certainly remember him. There's no denying that. Along with Capello, and Luciano Spalletti, the most successful coach of this century for Roma. Um, I hope that he also has fond memories of us, because it's undeniable that a link was built between Roma and Mourinho, and it's undeniable that it should last an eternity in the Eternal City.
100%. And I think that's probably the best way to summarize his time at Roma. I, I said at the time when he arrived on the 25 programs I had to do it in the day it happened, I said the same thing. Jose Mourinho and Roma were the ideal match because you had the guy who was very low, as you said, taken for granted. He needed to be loved again. And there's no better place to come where if you ever need a boost to your self-esteem, if you, as long as you are just not a complete and total shithead, you will be embraced, particularly if you have the name recognition as Jose Mourinho does. There's no better place to come than AS Roma. And it was a perfect marriage between two sets of partners who needed each other. Roma needed Jose Mourinho, as you said, coming off this spell where, I mean, Spalletti, the absolute torture that was Paulo Fonseca. We know we don't have to regurgitate it, but
But not even from a managerial standpoint. Those years were hell because the stadium was closed during Fonseca's years. Uh, with Di Francesco, it was on and off. With Spalletti,
yes,
there was the whole problem with him and Totti. So there was so much turmoil, and Mourinho found himself in the perfect place. He found himself in the place where he could be Mourinho, where he was encouraged to be himself. He was actually being pushed to be the face of a club because the Friedkins, Roma, notoriously shy and quiet, refused to show themselves. So Mourinho took on that responsibility, and for a while he embraced it. I think afterwards became a bit too tiring, a bit too exhausting, but he was allowed to be himself. He was allowed to be the great manager that he is in a place that values him. So I don't know how easy it will be also for him to find
mm,
something like this. For
yes.
Roma,
What
it
is
will
next for him? Oh,
for Roma it will be very difficult to replicate what they had with Mourinho. That's why Daniele De Rossi is such an exceptional exception. Um, but both parties come out of this highly emotional because both
yes.
parties needed each other desperately in that summer of 2021.
Yes, it was the perfect pairing at the perfect time. Right before we go, Roma, they just did the photo gallery of the first day of Daniele De Rossi at Roma, and they released another photo of Dan Friedkin. So, you and I have another one that we can
Yes,
use for
yes, one more photo to
for
be used
yeah.
70
So
times.
instead of the same four, um, I don't know what concerns me more. If you look at this photo, I don't know what you call this, but when you have the pants, the jeans that have the two dual tone, I don't know what you call it, that like acid washed. He's got these jeans that I think I wore in 2002. Um,
Are those the same jeans
when
that
I
Francesco Totti used to wear in 2004 when he
yeah,
would
just
ride
like the
out in his
very well, like
Ferrari?
just yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm more concerned by that or if I am more concerned by Ryan Friedkin. No belt, with his suits. They
Wow,
both can
there's
do
no
better,
better way to end the podcast than to talk about
still,
fashion
I use these photos
protects
as
and
proof
family.
of life confirmations because
Yes.
we just need them every few
Yeah, we
months to
just
make
need, yeah,
sure
yeah. Every once in a while, it's
we
good to see them living and breathing and not just hearing
yeah.
about them, moving around the empty halls of
Correct.
Trigoria,
Correct. I don't need a photo of them holding up the today's
the
edition of
newspaper. Yeah.
Gazzetta dello Sport. I prefer this manner. Before we go, first match Daniele De Rossi against Hellas Verona.
Yeah.
To me, that seems about just about as Serie A as you can get. He either had to be Hellas Verona or Chievo Verona. Every interim manager has to make their debut against. I'm pretty sure it is written into
Luciano
the
Spalletti
decrees of
against
Serie A.
Hellas Verona. Yeah,
Yes,
with El Shaarawy scoring the back heel. Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
So there it is.
um,
No expectations from me. No,
yeah,
no
just
pressure in my opinion. I
show
mean,
some
it's a
balls,
must win.
maybe.
It's a must win, obviously, but there is no pressure. I think because the pressure will be the event itself. It will be the match
Correct.
itself. Will be everything surrounding that match. It will be the story rather than the match. I hope that De Rossi. See, even by reflex, I immediately say Mourinho. No, now I have to learn better. I hope that De Rossi and the team. Wow, that feels really weird. I hope that De
That does feel
Rossi
weird.
and the team are able to tune out the noise. No excuses for the players. No excuses. As always,
It is only 5 points, guys. Come
when you
on.
make exactly when you make a managerial switch, there are no excuses for the players, right? it's
Correct.
it's what you then the expectation is for them to react. If you can't react for someone like Daniele De Rossi, if you can't acknowledge the importance that disappointment has in the grand scheme of things, then I mean, good riddance when the summer comes. Like,
Yeah, chapeau.
so
Bye bye.
I hope that the team is able to tune out the noise leading up to this match because the next string of games are perfectly approachable for Roma given the moment they're
Okay.
in.
We
I'm not
can't
even
go
I'm
there
not
after
even
the
trying.
last
I'm
time
not
we said
even
that last time.
I'm not even trying to take into account into the equation this friendly that we have in Saudi Arabia in a week's time. I mean, is that still on? Are those? I mean,
It's
you
still
show
on.
up to
Oh,
Saudi Arabia without Mourinho as your coach. I'm not sure you're gonna be able to fly back. You know, like I'm not sure if they're gonna take too kindly to it. I think they were looking very forward to that. It's not gonna. It just nothing ends. For me, there is no
no.
catastrophe in sight. What there can be is a lot of scrutiny, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions. But I hope that the team. I'm not expecting people say immediately, "Well, what is De Rossi going to change tactically?" Well, what do you
Oh,
want
come
him to
on.
change tactically in a few days? He's still going to play the 3-5-2 because you don't just walk into a lineup and say, okay, guys, whatever you learned, now don't do it. No, it
Yeah, and by
takes
the way,
time.
tactics aren't the first 5 problems that this team has had over the past 3
Well,
months.
well,
So,
I would argue
no,
no,
no, man, come on, energy. I don't need to see Zalewski,
I would
walking about the
argue that
pitch while
I would
Theo
still
Hernandez is
I
putting one in the back of the
no,
net. Come
no,
on.
no, no, no.
I
There,
just need some energy. That's it. That's all
I
I
would
want.
argue no, John. I would argue no. Tactics
Well,
also
okay.
is
Well, here,
important.
let me. I will put it this way to end it though. Listen, the guys who have struggled and who have been absolute crap in these last months, man. If you are going to be one of those guys who is not giving the energy, who is not showing the fight, who is not showing the
Absolutely.
spirit,
No, no, but
if you can do it under De Rossi, you will be completely exposed under this guy.
no, absolutely,
Completely, completely.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But it is there. It is a problem. But right now, the important thing is to get going, get off the ground, blast off because you're sitting there, you're sitting ninth. Yes, you can either go one way or the other. You can go up or down. That's it. There is no in between. This is the moment in the season where these things have to be figured out. Unfortunately, you are dealing with a particularly difficult situation. You have no sporting director. You are yet to appoint it. You just sacked your coach. You're in between a storm. You have to handle it. You have to protect yourself. I hope the players protect De Rossi. I hope De Rossi protects the players. And most importantly, I hope the fans protect the team instead of turning against it. Because I know that is particularly tempting, especially when it comes to players and ownership, to just
Yeah, I
turn
mean, just
flat
turn
out
on the
turn their back
radios
on
today,
them.
man. It's
This
it's
is the
toxic stuff.
last this is the last situation that the team needs this kind of stuff. The team still needs that same energy that filled the Olympico up until now.
It is only 5 points, still within reach. We will see what happens this weekend. Oh, never a dull moment, but we will be here after the match at the weekend. Until then, ciao.